Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Bringing this to you pretty much live from Argentina. I am down here in a beautiful place called La Rioja for their nationals. We're kind of midweek, halfway through the comp, and I thought it'd be really fun. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about folks heading off to their first comps this winter down in Roldanillo in Mexico and stuff, and so I thought it'd be fun to put some really good comp pilots in a little group. Well, this is the first time we've done this little group talk about competitions. So we talk about gaggle flying and starts and headspace and safety and wings and finding good lines and strategy and pretty much A to Z of comps. So I think you're going to really enjoy this. My guests they're from all over the world. Francisco Mantaras, has been on the last two Worlds team for Argentina, and really, really good pilot. Lives in the States right now, but is doing super well here. I think he's in second or third right now overall. The Canadian, but originally from Belgium, JP Vandenbegine. I don't think I'm saying his last name right, but JP or Robert. Great dude, an awesome pilot. It's been flying since 1998, been in a lot of comps. And lastly, Taiwanese guy, but also living in the States, Chien Huang, we call him Jimmy, and has also been flying comps for a long time. So I just sat these guys down, and you'll hear some traffic noise in the back, and you'll hear a lot of bugs. We're at this hotel, we're outside. Francisco was packing a reserve when we were doing this, so there's some noise. We are not in the studio, as you can tell with the noise behind me, but super fun talk, a lot of laughs. I think you're going to enjoy it. And before we get into it, one of the questions that was asked that I didn't get to on that last Ask Me Anything show was one of our Patreon supporters asked if I could lay out like the perfect dream year. If I could go anywhere and to fly every month of the year, where would I go? And a little bit of thoughts behind that. So I've put together a little list here. This is just if I had the year off and plenty of cash and I just wanted to fly my brains out. And these are the places that I would certainly think about going. So month by month. January, which is actually what I'll be doing this year, is I'd go to Valle de Bravo. Pretty hard to beat Valle. The comp scene there is awesome. The flying there is totally reliable. The food's great. It's cheap. The pilots are awesome. And Miguel runs the best show on earth in my mind. So that'd be where I would go, and actually is where I'm going this January. In February, depends on what you'd want to focus on, but a great place to go is Roldanillo, Colombia, for nice soft thermals, great flying, great cloud flying. A lot of people have been down there. There's always lots of comps there that time of year. I'm going to be down there actually this year for the British Nationals, which end I think the February 2nd, but February is still a really good month. December, January, February are all really good months in Roldanillo. I'd also think about going to El Hierro and the Canaries to practice acro. I've heard that's super reliable and a really nice time to be there. You can also, of course, think about New Zealand, Australia. Those are good months to be down in either of those zones. March, I've been hearing really good things about Costa Rica, very reliable flying, 60, 100K triangles every day. So that would certainly be on my list. I've never flown down in Costa Rica. That'd be pretty fun. Or you can head down to Brazil and do like Baixo Guandu or any of the number of amazing sites they've got in that huge country. March can be a really good time down there. They often have comps that time of year down there as well. April, I would go to Beer in India. Right now is the time to be in Beer, India in the fall for total reliability, but April is the time for the really big flights. So there's a lot more down days, still a lot more weather than there is in the fall, but that's when you get a lot more instability. It's a lot colder, but you can get way tall and push it way back into the deep Himalaya there. That would be pretty fun. That's been on my list for a long time. I've flown Beer a couple times, but always in the fall, which is a much narrower season, but very reliable. That's happening right now. Those of you who are watching X Contest, you're seeing flights from there every day. That kind of starts early October and goes through about the 10th of November, typically. April, I'd also think about the Alps. Some of the lower sites in the Alps, the higher sites are still too snowy, but places like Annecy and Lauragna and the Maritime Alps down south can be really good in April. The last few years, they've had big flights for like 2 or 3 days in a row, but then, there's also a lot of downtime. But I really like spring flying in Europe, and it doesn't tend to be great where I live in Sun Valley, but another place you can think about going is like the Sierras start getting pretty good in April out in California. In May, again, the Alps, I have been completely shut down in May, and I've had some of the best flights of my life in May, so pretty hit and miss on the weather. The Sierras are pretty reliably producing that time of year. They can also be pretty bad. May is kind of tough, around the world it's the monsoon season, so May's tricky, but that can be a fantastic time to hit the Sierras. And then as we move into June, but also May, that's when I did the Alaska Traverse. I would go back to Alaska in a heartbeat. That's the time to be there. Any of the really northern areas. So Norway, Sweden, Scotland, those are the months, May and June, to be in any of those places. And, for me, Scotland or Alaska, pretty hard to beat. July, I'd be smack dab home in Sun Valley. I used to have said probably August in Sun Valley, but these days in the West in the U.S., it's just the fire season's vicious. It's getting us every year. It used to be like every 10 years. Say what you will about climate change, but it's hammering us. And so it's pretty unbreathable often in August at home these days. So July is when I had the big flight a bunch of years ago. That tends to be when we get our biggest air. And so, you have a lot of down days, but pretty much anywhere in the Rockies, July is a pretty magical month. And the other one I'd consider to be the Caucasus, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea across Mount Erebus, the highest mountain in Europe. And that whole range has been very intriguing for a long time. There's some political stuff going on there, and some things are maybe not totally safe from that side from that standpoint, but that'd be certainly a place I would take a look at. In August, I'd be up in Canada, up in Pemberton or Golden. There's been some amazing flights going down up there the last couple of years. August is getting late. Certainly by the end of the month, you're not getting long flights. It starts to get pretty stable, but terrific time to be up there. Again, if the fires aren't too bad. The other place I would certainly consider is Mongolia, Pakistan. Those would be a couple places that would be pretty magical that time of year. September, I kind of struggled with this one. September is an amazing month at home, but the big flights have been that they've seen these things really dry out over the Wyoming Flats. Bill Belcourt and Cody McTank and Chris Galley and all those guys that are based out of Salt Lake have been doing huge flights from a couple different sites, one Porcupine and another Lab. They fly right down a freeway, so it's pretty tame. You can fly in a lot of wind there, and they do some huge distance. If they could make that work in July, they would go a really, really, really long way. But typically it just ODs every day through about end of August. So September is proving a really nice stomping ground to hit some big downwinders there. In October, like I said earlier, Beer India is pretty hard to beat. You fly almost every day. Fantastic triangles there, and just food. I mean, the whole scene there is terrific. The other one I'd consider, of course, is the Sertão, Brazil, which I did last year. Quixadá is the most widely known place, but now they're doing these great tows from Keiko and Patu, and there's a bunch of sites. But that's, of course, where the current world record stands. From Tacima, which is a really tough place to make work. Hats off to those guys to make that work, but that's a big patience game. You're going to be waiting around a lot to fly out of Tacima, but more reliably, you go to Quixadá or go to Patu or one of the other sites that's further inland and test your heavy wind skills and flying over some pretty rocking terrain. November, Chile or Argentina. Now that I'm down in Argentina for this comp, this place is super cool. I've heard great things as well about Chile. They've got their nationals are next month in November in Santiago. I've heard great things about that, so I would put those on the list. And then December, yeah, I mean, New Zealand, Australia. You can do the flatland thing over Deniliquin and the towing. That is really hot and a lot of flies, but they do huge distances there. Also a really nice time when the flats aren't working. You can head up into Bright and do some cool mountain flying or hill flying, really, for Australia. But and then a couple of I guess it was 2 years ago now, I went down and did a race in Zapoltepec, which is outside of Guadalajara in Mexico, which is really cool, surrounded by big volcanoes. And they're going to have a PWC there this year. So if you've done Valle a lot and you're looking for a new place in Mexico, that would be top of the list. So there you go. 12 months of that'd be a pretty epic year if you could pull all those off, or even just a few. So those are my recommendations. There are many, many more wonderful places to fly, but those are the ones that came to the top of my mind immediately. And let's get into it. Here's the show, and please enjoy this talk with some really good comp pilots live here in Argentina. Apologize for the sound, but it's what it is. Enjoy. Okay, hey guys, thanks for joining me here. We're all in Argentina, and I'll do a whole pre-thing before this, so we're just going to get right into it. But why don't you just give me your names and a really brief kind of comp history, and that'll give the audience a little bit of know-how about who you are and your various accents.
Okay, so my accent is typically French probably, but in reality it's a bit Belgian. So my name is Robert Vandenbegine. I come from Belgium. I'm flying now for Canada because that's where I live. So I've been flying comps for a very, very long time. I think my first comp was 98 or something by the time we took pictures. But I was quite not really at it. So I stopped competing and I went back. So I won 2 times the Belgian championship, and this year I am the Canadian champion. So it's quite funny for me to be champion of 2 countries. And I'm into some PWC sometimes, but not that much. I have quite a lot of work, so it's a bit difficult for me to manage everything and be able to compete a lot. And so from year to year, it depends.
And you've been in Quebec how long now?
It's been 3 years and a half now.
And the flying's good there?
Yeah, flying is super nice. A few days a year only, but but it's nice. When it flies nice, it's nice.
And what's JP?
JP stands for Jean-Pierre and Robert, but my name is Robert.
Okay,
yeah.
But we go by JP.
JP is okay.
Yeah, okay.
If you like it, I'm used to that too, so no worries.
Well, my name is Jimmy. My real name is actually Huang Jinjie. I'm originally made in Taiwan and recently exported to the U.S. about 30 years ago. So I raced kind of on and off. I was racing really seriously from 2009 to 2012. Had a serious accident, so I kind of stopped for 5 years. So now I'm just kind of coming back to the racing scene since like 2016 and stuff like that. So I do this more recreationally. I'm not as accomplished as Robert here, but just trying to play the game and learn the sport and having fun.
Well, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Francisco. I'm from Argentina, and I've been flying for a long time, but competing not for so long, although my first competition was in 2003. And then the second maybe was in 2007 or so. And then I got really into it about 2011, I think, when I bought my first comp wing, I could say. And since then, I've been really engaged with this, and I enjoy it.
And you've tell us about your Worlds experience. You've been on the Worlds team for Argentina?
Yeah, actually, I competed the Worlds 2 times already with the team. I've been in the team since then. That was 2015, the first Worlds I did. And then the second one in Italy in 2017. And it was a great experience. And I'm here in Argentina now competing the national championship to try to stay in the team, as I need to be ranked within the first 4 of the country.
Yeah, so. Cool. And do you call Argentina still home, or is the U.S. home?
You know what? Both are home, I guess, because I work in the States and I spend a lot of time. But of course, my home original, it's in Argentina. And I think my heart is in Argentina, I should say.
Yeah, cool. He's been cooking us up some insane barbecue. I have to redo my house now to make a proper Argentinian barbecue. It's been amazing food. Thank you.
I'm glad you like it. It's my pleasure.
So let's just stick with you, Francisco. I wanted to get into, we get a lot of questions about people that are just getting into comps. And if you could kind of rewind the clock and, and share with us a little bit about what you've learned. Let's talk about before you launch, like gear, headspace. I always talk about, and it's not my thing, and Nate Scales always says no schoolboy errors. We had a friend of ours forget his instruments today. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for here. Like, what are the things that you've learned to be relaxed or kind of get into that right frame of mind?
Well, I used to actually even write notes for myself that I should read even a few days before starting a comp, and those notes were like, stay away from the party gang, stay away from drinking, stay away from staying up late. I don't seem to succeed, but
but that's the idea.
But that's the idea, at least. And I was serious about it a few years ago. Now I'm starting to relax a little bit more. I guess too because I learned better and I have more experience. So I guess I don't commit so many mistakes as I used to. Those mistakes, I've been erasing mistakes by, maybe writing these notes. So I used to need to read them every time. Now I think I assimilated them. So.
And do you have any kind of like just set routines, that you do every time, no matter what? Like, do you like to launch early, late? Do you have any kind of set routines with your gear, charging instruments? Just
well, yeah, I have my own routines of charging and controlling my equipment before. I can't really remember exactly right now all the routine because it's already so assimilated that I just do it. But then in terms of taking off early or late or wait for whatever, I just adapt to the day. If I see that the day is going to be strong and fast to go up, I guess I take off only, not I wouldn't say minutes, but maybe half an hour before the start. That supposedly gives me enough time to be at the top. But some days are super slow or launch is complicated. So those days I try to launch earlier. So I just adapt to each day.
Yeah, for me, I kind of have a system. I kind of do the same thing every time. I buckle in the same way so I don't forget something. And then right before I take off, I tend to kind of pat myself, make sure my harness is on correctly. I always grab my reserve handles 3 times on both sides just to know where it is, a little muscle memory thing. Just make sure instrument's on, everything's ready, because once you're in air, you kind of game on. You don't want to kind of make these little mistakes, something you could have solved on the ground. It's just one less thing to worry about. That's kind of my system.
Yeah, I have different routines, and I can. Well, about takeoff first. Usually, when I go to a country I never visited, I would take off quite early because I'd like to learn the day, as it goes. So to take off early is good thing. Certainly, as you enter the competition, to understand how the air will evolve during the day. That's one point. Another thing is I listen to music. So I have 2 different songs. One song for sleep and one song for to concentrate, just to focus before the start or before the takeoff. So I would probably get out of the group, listen to some music, my song, just to switch my mind to the competition, and then I'm ready to go.
How did you identify that song? Is it the same song all the time?
It's always the same, and it's a song I use when I'm running, and it's a song that has different beats and some powerful beat for sprints, and I like adrenaline and sprints, and so that's how the flow comes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just brought up something. How do you guys approach fitness with flying, with either competitions or just XC flying? Is it something you think about? Is it important?
It is more and more important, I think, today. In the past, for me, the most important was to be able to stand long flights. Now I'm okay with that. Of course, you need to take care of yourself, so drinking, eating, and stuff like that. But still now, I need to prepare myself before going to the camp. So I do some gym and workouts and stuff like that. As I said, the food is also very important. So when you come to a new country, maybe switching from one food to the other can be problematic. So you have to make it quite slowly and adapt yourself. So I always come with my food also from home and try to have always the same kind of eatings. So I eat rice most of the days. or pasta.
Something real simple. And
Yeah, simple, basic
it's not going to make you sick. And
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to start this next question off with a story. I was just over in Macedonia for the Nordic Opens, and you guys probably saw all the really tragic news in the British Opens, the British Nationals. I think it was the last day. They had a mid-air collision, and both the pilots died. Quite unusual. One was a very experienced pilot, and the other was actually not in the competition, but was free flying, and obviously they got screwed up in the air, and so super sad. But it was quite interesting. The next comp was being run by the same organizer, Goran, who you all know, and he made a comment that I thought was really interesting, that the accidents these days, like back in the Peter Heda days, in the the initial two liners with the R11 and the R10 and stuff, it was like, we were all just hanging on, waiting for the blow up, and you just don't see these gliders blowing up anymore. Like the places for accidents, especially in a comp like the one we're in here in Argentina, where it's not a PWC, everybody's not on two liners. There's a lot of Bs, there's a lot of Cs. The turning circumference is different. The knowledge is different. The ability level is different. And he was just ramming, like, hey, the dangerous thing here is the gaggles. It's at the start, and everybody's together. It's like the most dangerous time in the race. And I kind of found some new appreciation for that. So I want to ask you guys about how to gaggle fly, but also, what do you think about that? And what do you think about, the risk of gaggle flying? And
For me, that's not the biggest risk, I think, when I fly. Depending on the gaggle, of course, but most of the gaggle I play with or fly with are totally okay. It depends on the day. So I've been in some gaggles in competition in PWC in France, where the gaggle was each individual flying by itself away from each other, and so yeah, it depends of the day for sure. But I think flying mountains and lee side stuff are still maybe more well, I would say more dangerous for me, I think, because pushing the bar on the on the lee sides and stuff like that, we still see pilot doing it, and it's a bit weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I should rephrase that. He wasn't saying it was more dangerous for sure, but that was just a risk that maybe some people were underappreciating, and was really, I think what caught me was that I've really backed off my aggression in gaggles, especially at the start, because there's no point. It doesn't really seem like, that there's not really any point in like really tight, turning tighter than everybody else, because at the start, it's the start,
Yeah, but the point
you've
of
got
the
a
start
long
is
race.
there is only one place where you want to be, is at the correct place and the highest. So still the fight is already on, I think. But you're right. So we have to be aware, and I agree with you. But it's the same for when we are flying little groups, whether in the flats or on the mountains. I mean, there's no point to risk lives of each other by a collision or whatever, or pushing someone outside of the thermal. The funny thing is about paragliding is one of the sport that you have where you have to cooperate with your competitors. In many other sports, you fight with them, and here you need them. So just take care of them.
Yeah. Well, so before we get into gaggle flying, let's talk about starts. How do you get a good start? What are you thinking about? How are you trying to maneuver? Because the start is super important. It's been really important here, and they're so fun. I love starts.
Yeah, I think it's really about timing, and kind of going back a little bit about gaggle flying a little bit, kind of before we move on to the start. For me, like, it's almost like you have to share the space. And sometimes when you fly with your friends enough, you kind of have a relationship with them. You kind of wave them over. You kind of briefly talk to them, or like gesture, or just do a little head nod or something like that to kind of like indicate, or just look at them to let them know you see them. And so they're aware. And that's what happens. Usually in a tight situation, let's say if you have a slow day, like in Australia this year in PWC at the Bright, the takeoff was really weak condition. There's only really one or two house thermal. And you have an entire 150 guys and girls, just circling as high as they can, and with free flyers flying through the gaggle is pretty crazy. but at the same time, it works out. It's great. But that's where the fun is. That's fun. The sport. Your eyes open and you're just doing it. And for me, timing wise, I just try to just relax, just to get to the top. And I think with time and experience, you're gonna kind of figure a way how to kind of position yourself in the right place. And I think that's kind of where the magic, the flying is for me.
Yeah, I would add something is that maybe for me, at least, the last 15 minutes is some very important minutes for me. I need to be already at the position there. It's no way that the last 15 minutes I should be moving from one place to the other or whatever.
So you've kind of set this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to make this work.
Yeah. So when I take off, my first aim or objective is to really understand where the start will happen and how. And it was interesting 2 days before or yesterday, I don't remember, that we were drifting with the wind. So there was a tempo, and you do it 1-2 times, and then you know how long it takes to drift with the thermal and to get back to your position. And by the time you have to learn it and to understand how it goes, to be just there at the right moment, at the right place. So that's important.
Yeah, let's talk about this. How in all these years you've been flying, Francisco, how have you learned to climb better, be at the top, be in the right position for a start?
Well, back to the gaggle and start. I would say the start is the biggest gaggle of the race. So first of all, in terms of security and safety, you need to recognize whoever is around you. So sometimes I've been in super final gaggles, start gaggles, or any gaggle actually, because it's super final and the worlds are super tight and big goggles. Sometimes it's super aggressive, but you know who you have around, and those are so professional pilots that you're not afraid of them at all. But sometimes in a comp like this one, where you have different levels, then you really need to recognize who's around you, and then you need to be more aware or less aware depending on your surrounding. And in terms of me positioning at the top, I don't know what I do. I just, observation for me is a big thing. Flying gaggle. When you're out of the gaggle, you're flying on your own. It's all about feeling. But when you're flying the gaggle, it's observation. And the minute you miss something, you lose a few spots, a few meters for sure.
I think you hit on the thing I was looking for here, is that I find that the best pilots I always think about like Josh Cohen with the swivel head. He sees everything. He's got like 10 eyes, and I think that the lower hours pilots are really locked into what's here, and the better pilots are, and sorry, the audience can't see what I'm doing. I'm talking like tunnel vision versus looking at really swirling around and seeing everything, because it's all those half a meters. It's the little better climb that he's getting and she's getting, and you got to move.
Exactly. Just a few meters make the difference many times.
Yeah. Before we move on from gaggle flying, let's stay there for a bit as we move down the course. In the beginning, when I first started racing, I could hang with the lead gaggle for like 2 or 3 climbs, and then inevitably I would lose them. And, of course, it's just practice. But the question I get all the time is, how do I stay with that gaggle? And I don't know that there's just well, here's the answer, but I'd like to hear your answer. It seems like it's just hours in practice, but
yeah, you're saying it is practice, but I guess there's 2 ways of approaching and catching up with the front gaggle. Maybe not the lead gaggle, but at least the front gaggle, the gaggle you have in front of you, one is under, the other one is pretty much the same altitude, and the other one is above. The safer one is always above, and hopefully will be the best one and faster too, because normally the thermal, as you go higher, sometimes it gets better, and then flying at higher altitude normally is faster. So it's the best way for me. But sometimes there's no other way than just pushing low and counting on luck to try to get the thermal before the big gaggle. Maybe you're low, but you catch it before, and hopefully you catch up. So it always depends on the day and the way it's working. In my set of rules of my little notebook, I have different. See, I say if the day is slow, always catch up from above. But if the day is strong, maybe you can catch up from under. So it really depends on the day. You have to adjust.
Yeah. this was one of the kind of breakthroughs I had at one point was that, when we're first learning, we're told you top out every climb. Talk about how that really does not apply in racing.
Yeah, sometime when you actually top off, I mean, depending on what type of glider you're flying, when you top off, you're actually spending too much time climbing because as the thermal reaches the top, it actually peters out a little bit. There's also another thing when the thermal actually flow out, you kind of go through the falls, and that could actually take all that time you spent topping off, and you just wasted falling outside the thermals on either side of it. So
you have something to say there, JP?
Also, what matters is the lift. If the lift is very strong, maybe it's best to stay in it, not to leave it. Usually it works like that, even the leaders, they are pushing a bit and they're leaving too early some thermals. And then you simply stay in and you catch up easily. So it really depends on the conditions, I guess. I wanted to say also that maybe sometimes you don't have to stay with the gaggle. I would recommend to stay as much as you can. But even today, I had a strange experience when I changed the route. So the lead gaggle were on the mountains. I crossed the flats and I was way above everybody. And I managed to reach and get in touch with the lead gaggle, but I was above them. So I could top them, stay on the same thermal with them. And then it was kind of easy and relaxing.
I mean, when you have a good idea, don't be a lemming, I think, for sure, right?
Exactly.
Don't distrust your good ideas because you can have them. I think it's easy to get locked into the gaggle mentality, but sometimes you can have a good idea like you did today and it really works out.
Yeah.
I think the other thing about gaggle flying, it seems like is if it's a big gaggle and you're at the bottom of it and everybody goes, taking that time to climb to where they were is pointless, because if everybody's out in front of you, you can use them like ping pong balls. You can see who's getting the lift, and by the end of that next glide, you're gonna have caught up. That I think often you don't really need to top it out if you're at the bottom of the gaggle.
But being at the bottom, I think you have to be really mentally strong to be at the bottom. And it works. So at some points, I remember a competition I was in Pedro Bernardo. Everybody was staying at the mountain. Nobody wanted to go to the next waypoint on the flat because they thought, it's too early. And I went. Of course, it took me a bit of time to find the lift, And when I catched it, everybody came. They were above me, of course, because I lost a lot of altitude to find this. I literally saw the whole camp passing above me. So I say, okay, I'm not grounded yet, so the task is on. And I won the task at the end.
Really?
So, it was amazing. So it's possible. It's always possible. You never know what will happen in the next moves.
I really agree with what you're saying there, because you never know. There's just so many variables out there, and there's so many different factors that affect a day. I mean, the lead gaggle might be a little, tactical, kind of calculating where they're going to go, seeing who's around them, and kind of keeping their place. And maybe they will let some people go, let them sniff out the thermals, and while they kind of keep their, competitors more at bay, they might let other guys just go ahead and just kind of sniff things out, So I think that's kind of another play you could do. Just kind of use every pilot's out there to kind of gauge, how the day is and stuff like that.
Well, the only thing I have to say about that is there's two different animals in this sport. The comp of the PWC and the professional, where if you leave the gaggle, for sure they're going to win against you. You'll never beat the gaggle. But in this kind of small comps, sometimes the single moves are really pay off, like the move Robert did today. We were doing some kind of gaggle flying, and all of a sudden he showed up in the valley higher than everyone. So that was a single move, and it worked. That in PWC most likely won't work. So there's two different things there that you have to recognize.
Let's jump to that then. So talk about what you shouldn't do. What are the things that you learned all these years that okay, I didn't need to learn that lesson again. Like me, the first day, I made a break too early. I do it all the time. In a great position, was in a really good spot to win the race, and I broke too early, and I didn't stay with you guys. I didn't stay with the gaggle, and it's like Russ Ogden calls it discipline.
Well, I think you're talking about my huge mistake
No, I'm
today.
talking about me. Oh, you did. Okay.
I did
yeah.
it today.
Okay.
I was leading the whole comp pretty much today. And at the end, I was so in this mental aggressive mode that I kept pushing. Well, when I was actually the highest, and I could have just stayed above everyone to hit the last turn point and make it go first. And instead, I was so pushy today that I just left the gaggle on my own once again, and thinking that I was doing good. And the gaggle behind really went up so high that passed me above. Yeah, they got me. So
globally, that's lack of discipline. Is that what you're saying?
absolutely, because if you find yourself on top of everyone, what's the rush of leaving that place? Just stay there, check it out, breathe, relax for a moment and say, what's my position? What's next? How far I'm from goal? And should I leave or stay? And then you make your decision. No, today I just didn't think at all. I just pushed. Big mistake.
I think Gavin was trying to kind of refer to a situation that me and him got into the first day of the comp. We were like super psyched and just went out and charged ahead and got super low, and kind of vice versa today. While me and Francisco's out in front, he's waving at me to go, and I kind of left him and he kind of went to the flats by himself. So he's kind of getting back at me a little bit for that. But as we said before, the day varies so much. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, every move counts. I just think the best thing to do, just kind of be aware of the situation around you, the people around you, and just fly the best you can. I think for me personally, just flying comp is really just like challenging yourself, because every pilot's at a different level, especially at this comp. There's beginner pilots, there's world-class pilots here, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you just compete with yourself and just try your best and learn from your mistake, I think that's probably the best way for me to kind of approach the situation.
And you had a really good, a lesson that we all need to be reminded of. Yesterday, you came in a little bit lower than me. I got out in a dust devil, and you were like, "Yeah, I don't need to do that."
So I'm kind of give a little background of the situation. So basically, we just tagged the last turn point. We're going to the end of speed, and while we're going to our end of speed, I see this giant dust devil, and I have a big smile on my face right now because I see Gavin just charging for the same dust devil too. This thing's just humongous. It's like probably like, I would say, what do you think, Gavin? Like,
that was big.
It was big. It was gnarly. It was just
full of trash
everywhere, and we're just both getting pulled into it. But Gavin's a little higher. He was actually playing with the dust devil. He's already kind of getting a little lift while I'm approaching it low, and we're over like a housing development with power lines. Not many places to land. The brushes here looks like they're really low, but they're probably 3 to 4 feet tall. So while both of us approaching this dust devil, I just see Gavin's kind of doing the thing. Next thing I see his wing just disappears. He's actually going up the thermal sideway. I'm like, is this a good thing to do right now? Is this a smart thing to do? And for me, I have a new baby. I have a new family. So when my direction approach was there's a power line running to me, I just decided hey, it's better to fly tomorrow than spend the time at the hospital and just laugh it out. But Gavin took the thermal by the horn and made it a goal. And while I was left there in the hot heat of Argentina, just learned my lesson. No, it's okay. I'm okay with it. I get to fly another day, and that's really what's really all about.
Yeah. In my defense audience, I was quite a bit higher. I think it would have been pretty scary for you to go in that thing. Finding good lines, like this is like a science that I find impossible to teach, but I would like to get your thoughts on it, because it's everything, isn't it? I mean, I find that most people can climb pretty well with enough hours, but it's finding those good lines. It's gliding that is the really
that's the ultimate feeling. I think. It's really tough to teach, to learn. But flying comps is a good school for that, because you see all those lines, especially here. I think pilots were very disciplined, that we spread we don't stick together, and everybody spreads, and so you can see the different lines, and it's really interesting. Well, when
Develop that more, because some of the listeners might not know what you're talking about, because that's important.
yeah, so we were in the lead gaggle, and instead of having all pilots in one file, one after each other, we were all flying on up front all together, and so we cover a large area of ground.
You can think of like a flock of birds,
like
just
birds,
spread out.
like like gooses, and then there you can see the difference in the air, and glider floating a bit better, you being in a less favorable area, and then you of course you have to react. If you don't react, you stick to that and you go down and down and down. So you have to change your line when it's appropriate, keep the line when it's good. When we're talking about lines, we're talking about convergence also, so it's good to understand what's a convergence and how to stay on it. Sometimes it's not necessary to turn, you just have to go straight, and then you climb. We've had that like in Piedrahita, or there are some known places for that where you just literally can fly, I don't like 10Ks straight. Yeah, and you go up. It's amazing. But if you're on the wrong side of the convergence, then you go down. So that's the problem. So flying lines is mainly practice, and trying to understand. So first thing is, of course, to be aware that there are lines. Most of pilots don't even know that. And once you know, you have to look at birds, look at other pilots, and try to understand what's happening with the air and feel it. One thing is also flying with B helps a lot, because when you're flying with the brake lines, you don't feel the air as well as when you're flying with the Bs. And then you can have some micro information that will eventually lead you to the best line.
So let's drill down a little bit in technique there. What are you doing? How much pressure do you have in your hands? What are you doing with your feet on your speed bar? What's ideally?
Well, I would say that, for example, when we're on end of speed, really pushing and for the final glide, it does matter much less. It's more in the course when you're so if you're full bar, you don't feel that much most of the time, so you should probably release a bit the bar, and it's working quite a lot. So instead of pushing like mad trying to find the next thermal, there are pilots who are flying slower, but they just float in the air much better. So at the end of the transition, you arrive even sometimes higher than the other. I had a race it was a cross-country flight with a Delta, so a hang glider. And it was amazing because the guy was pushing hard, and I was trying to stick to the lines. And he was way in front of me, but super low. So at the end, I arrived, and we met again. And so that's how I could catch up with him instead of pushing with him, and it would be nonsense.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was funny and interesting indeed.
Jimmy?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of impatient, so I kind of want to get to point A to point B as fast as I can. And we use the smash bar, like what Robert says, is sometimes you don't feel anything, and sometimes you actually might fly through quite a bit of thermals. Like for example, like the Chien, the last task, where we were stinking high, and then we thought we could make it to goal, but because we're so like into winning and just kind of making the task, that we flew through like 5 thermals, and all of us dirted. Instead of we could just slow down a little bit, just took a few turns, we would have made it. We were like short by 100 meter. I mean, it's crazy. But that's where racing comes in, that kind of like Francisco says, discipline. You gotta have discipline and stuff like that. For me personally, I tend to hold on to the Bs quite heavily. And I discover that for me, sometimes I do kind of put most of my weight on it, but right now I try to relax and just kind of pull back like a bow and arrow type of scenario. And to me, that works out for me. Speed bar wise, my feet's just kind of like a sewing machine. It's constantly moving, adjusting the pitch of the glider. When you get a hard hit, you kind of want to release the bar really quick. But when I first started, I would release, and that would actually make the glider pitch up and slow down. And then when you step on speed bar again, you kind of lose all that momentum, and you kind of use all the potential energy you saved to gain that speed again. So now I'm really good at just once I hit a bump, I let go and push it right back. And sometimes that's actually kind of reaffirming to just like push on that bar and feeling that there's a lot of pressure at the front edge of the wing. For me, that's comforting. That's like, oh, there's still air in front of me and things are good.
And Jimmy, how did you learn how to do that? Has that just been flying in comps and practicing it, or are you actually even going out on like sledder days when it's really mellow and doing a bunch of pendulum flying? And is there, because it's intuitive after a long time.
Yeah.
It's not very intuitive in the beginning. We hit a thermal and we come off our speed bar. It's the dead wrong thing to do.
Yeah. For me, I actually don't have a lot of time on my days off. I work and I'm a full-time daddy daycare. So I only fly comps, and that's just kind of where I learn. And I think just kind of over time, I discovered that you just have to trust your glider. I mean, your glider, today's gliders are so strong nowadays and so solid. You just have to kind of test it. For a long time, I would literally just don't step on bar. And I was like, why am I coming to these races and finishing so slow? And I discovered the speed bar. Like, wow, that's an amazing tool, man. So as I kept pushing, just pushing the limit, challenging myself, challenging the glider, and knowing the limits of the glider, you kind of get a feel what it can handle, what it can't handle. And that's kind of how I discovered it. And it works for me. Francisco, you have anything to add to that?
Well, what I can say is there's two different ways of flying. It's one is trying to stay high and finding amazing lines and stuff, and the other one is, chasing gaggles and pushing the bar. And the way I do it is when the day is strong. So again, it's observation and defining what kind of day you're flying. When I see that the day is strong, normally I go from A to B as fast as possible and just try to hit the next thermal and go up as fast as I can. But if the day is soft and not working so great, maybe I don't push that much bar. And actually my bar is super, my feet are super sensitive and releasing and pushing just to keep my glider at 12 o'clock right above my head, trying not to pitch up and down and stuff like that. That's the most important in a shitty day, let's call it, or a soft day. But again, in a strong day, maybe my technique is to hold on to those pieces of wood on the B risers and push hard on my feet. And whatever happens to the glider, just manage it with my hands and not with my feet sometimes. So it's the opposites, Mm-hmm. When I'm trying to gain better lines, maybe I play more with my feet. But when I try to just go fast and keep the glider above, I use more my hands. And I find it that it really works with the B risers. You can really pull them and you can be maybe full bar on, like today approaching to go. I didn't release bar ever since the last thermal. Mm-hmm. And my glider sometimes was surging really bad, and you know how bumpy the air was today, right? Mm-hmm. And I just hold on to those B risers and control it only with the B risers. Otherwise, I would not catch up. And that way, I was able to gain a couple of spots and to go. Yeah. Mm.
You guys talk about instruments a little bit. Are you using sticking with speed bar and with speed and glide and climbing and everything? But are you using McCready? Are you using polar curves? Are you how much are you looking versus how much feel?
Well, I don't use the instrument as I could probably, because those instruments are amazing. But I use my feelings and I look at the glide ratio and the speed of going down or up and stuff like that, and then try to come up with my best glide like that. Mm. It's not that I really understand my instrument, I have to say. I don't understand it as I wish to, Some people, maybe a Josh Kahn or some of these guys that are really good with the instruments, maybe they do better understanding them and they get more out of them, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not really an instrument guy either. I was just recently in Australia, and one of the pilots, Gareth, there was making fun of my dinosaur instruments that I was using. So again,
which are, go ahead and tell the audience.
Old school Garmin and then a 6030 Flight Tech. But for me personally, I actually only look at two things. I look at a glide ratio. So my glider, I know it flies around average on 8-1. If I'm not even getting close to that, I just step on it until I get as close as to it possible to 8-1, because usually when you're not gliding well, you probably in sync anyway. So you step on, you're trying to get out of that sync. And for me, that's kind of the way I fly. I just kind of look at an angle, and just go with the flow.
And are you pretty aggressive about changing your direction of flight when you're in sync, or are you just hammering bar?
No, I do. I actually use my B risers or weight shift, or just even rolling my ankle a little bit to change the speed bar, and actually will turn the glider 15 degrees or so. I don't do the 45-degree turn thing. I just do a little 15-degree here and there and just see if the sync rate's going up or down, and just kind of finding that fine line. And it just takes time to kind of figure that out. But sometimes you're just in sync. You just have to power through it, you know?
Yeah, and I'm finding the sync here really strong, and like big seams of it, which are obviously the other side of a really nice, because there were some nice convergence lines and stuff. But I was having more luck today with being a lot more aggressive. Like when we do these big, when you guys. I'm sure you've all done these too, like in Brazil, the big downwinders they do up on the Sertão and Quixada and that kind of thing. I learned there that you can't, if you just stay in the sync and hammer the speed bar, because you're going downwind, you're going to stay in it till the ground. You almost had to come like 90 degrees off, which was new for me. The whole like, it's supposed to be 45 degrees. That's what we learned, but that's not enough there. And I'm finding here, it's also, are you guys finding the same?
When the sync is strong, you do 90 degrees for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, if the day is strong, maybe you just push the bar and A to B as fast as possible. But especially with a soft day, you better do your 90 degree and find a better line for sure. And again, back to observation, you have to really look even behind and see what the guys are doing behind, because behind they can tell you that they're going better on a line more to the right or more to the left. So for sure. But switching directions, not switching directions, but turning 90 degrees sometimes, you have to do it, because like you're saying, otherwise you push all the way to the ground.
Sometimes it happens that you have even to go back. Francisco was talking about pilots climbing on the back. Yeah, if it's climbing and you're on the wrong side of the climb, you should go back. Maybe sometimes. So if you can. Yeah, it's an option.
This was something I also learned from Josh. Keep bringing Josh up, the Josh bot. But and I see it in Kriegel in the X Alps all the time. He's constantly going back in order to stay in the air.
We were kind of formatted in comps. When I learned comps, people
just
told
me,
"Yeah, go," and it's not good.
No.
Sometimes you have to think and pause a bit and look around. And so pilots have a trick to do on tour from time to time, just to look around. That's what I do sometimes. Just one tour in 0.5 or something, when you don't lose much altitude, just to check what's going on around you and go back. Or back to course. Talking about instruments, we were discussing about the lines a bit earlier in the discussion. Instruments are useful for that also, because you can feel the air when you look at your speed. So if you don't touch the bar, of course, you will have also lines with better speeds, or of course your vario, you have to look at it. So it helps for that. It certainly helps for distance to next waypoint. Of course, that's what I'm looking at. And also, what's very important to me is to know how high I am above ground at goal. So then it gives me the trigger to know, okay, now I can push the bar. I have a bit of a buffer, and now I can go through. And so, yes, it's important to know. Some instrument does ring, or they give you a signal, or audio signal, to inform you that, okay, now you're on glide to goal. You can just push the bar and go. So it's important to read the instrument, but I share the thoughts of Francisco and Jimmy that the most important is, of course, to look around. So I had a funny story about that, but it's looking at instruments. It was in the Pyrenees at PwC, and we had this waypoint, but the waypoint was on a small shoulder on a mountain, and I was looking at my instrument, and I was really getting close to the waypoint, but at the same time I was getting close to the ground, and I was going down smoothly but gently, and so a few meters before the waypoint I understood that I would never make it. So I turned, and because I was watching only my instrument, I was so low that doing my turn I landed. So I took my glider on my shoulder. I went like really 10 meters up, and then blim blim, it tagged the waypoint. I took off from there, and I was right, it was final glide to goal. So I did one final glide and I was on goal,
Oh,
but I was landed, so it was funny.
I love it. That just made me think of something else. The first day, you were on final glide and you bombed out.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy, you did yesterday. We've all bombed out many times. Is there a common theme? Is there is there a when you're on the ground after those? Is it very often the same thing? Like, shit, this is something I really shouldn't do anymore because or
Well, of course, it's competition, so you have to play the game anyway. So if you don't want to push, maybe you shouldn't join a competition. If you don't want to take some risk, if you don't want to gamble a bit, a bit, I say that. Well, the cool thing with competition nowadays is that you have a day that you can remove from your scoring. So you are allowed to do one mistake in most of the comps. Pushing is part of the game, but one thing is, we mentioned it earlier, is getting isolated, and maybe sometimes in front you have this feeling that, wow, you can do everything, and that's your day. Well, sometimes it is. So the most difficult part of it is that you have to recognize it. Sometimes you're on the flow and you can really win the task. And I won a few tasks in my career, and that's really exciting. That's super nice. It's a nice reward. So I guess that's why most of the pilots fly. Winning a task is a real nice experience. But besides that, when you land and when you bombed out, the difference between the pilots or amongst the pilots is when you have a strong mental, because you have to have this capacity of get rid of that and erase the board, and okay, next day is a new start and let's move on. It's difficult. It was difficult yesterday for Jimmy. It was difficult for me the first day. We were drinking a lot of beers to forget that, but it worked. So.
Jimmy, before we, I want to maintain that line of thought for a second. He was talking about going back, and one of the things that I've personally learned is that that it often seems like the distance to go back is like, oh my God, I never did it for a while, and now every time I do it, you're immediately with them. Like the penalty is zero. I find that the race is never, it's potentially one there, but where I think is the penalty is higher for when you're turning in crap. Like if it's an obvious climb that's behind you, it seems like the reward is always there to go get them, even though it seems like it's the wrong way. Have you had experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I deal with that all the time because you keep wanting to push forward and you don't want to backtrack and waste time. But at the same time is, once you're on the ground, you're on the ground. You're not playing the game anymore. So you kind of have to remind yourself that every time that turning back is a good thing. It's okay to turn back. Yeah. It's okay to apologize to the thermal gods, like go back and get a climb, regather yourself. And then again, the race is long. It could be very beginning of the day. And if you're already low, why not? Maybe towards the end you're racing. Yeah, take some risks here and there. But on that, the motorcycle is really hindering this little answering session. But
we've got some very Argentinian sounds in the background. It's all right.
Yeah, we're surrounded here. Yeah. One thing though is, if you remember how you went outside the last terminal, is also something to keep in mind, because if there was you were on the lee side and there was a big sink after the terminal, then it might be not a good option to go back to it.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But if there are so strong terminals and you know that you're not on the lee side of the terminal and that you will be able to catch up when you turn back, then yes, you have to consider going back to the gaggle. But for that, you have to maybe one of the main theme is here to be aware of the surroundings. So of course, if you push like mad, and after 10 minutes you realize that, oh, maybe I should go back, I will have a look. It's too late.
Yeah.
So once you leave a terminal and you know that there are people still in the terminal, you should check what they're doing. And sometimes they will hit the core at the right moment you're leaving the terminal, and then you're definitely not in a good position. So you should go back immediately. So it depends.
Yeah. Sure.
Depends. But
sure.
the main thing is be aware of what happens around you and in the surroundings.
So we've got a dinner to go to, so I want to be mindful of our time. But one more question, then I'm going to ask you guys also. You can plant this as we're talking, but your most exciting, cool comp story. But before we get to that, how do you guys approach the overall strategy for the week? Because we now that we have FTV, which is super cool, it allows us to push a lot harder. Francisco, this is an important comp for you. I know you're taking it pretty seriously because it means defending your position for the world's team. Rewind to before the first day. How would you generally approach day one versus day three versus the last day? And obviously that depends on where your position is, but talk about just kind of overall strategy.
Well, see, I'm bad for this. I'm not a strategic guy, I guess. I'm the guy that pushes every day, pretty much. Try to do my best every day. And I know we have a day that we can discard if we make a mistake, but you should never count on that day, but just try to do your best every day. And if one day doesn't work, then you can discard it. At the same time, that means that you can push it. You can push, and maybe you're mistaken by pushing, but that gives you the opportunity to do it and discard it if you didn't make it. So I guess trying the best every day is my only strategy here. Yeah. And again, it's like you count on that. So I think you can push every day pretty much. In this situation.
Would that change for you at all? Say if you were going into the last day and you were in the lead, or you were, say, securely in second or third, would you be more conservative?
Well, it always depends on what type of tasks you did before, for sure. So if you're comfortable, you have at least 5 good tasks, you can either push it to try to win another one, or you can relax and try to just give put another good task in your list and just be safe. But you just heard me. You can push it again. I said. I think my technique is just to push it every day, pretty much.
Cool.
For me, I just kind of approach this as a learning experience, since I'm kind of new at this again. And for me, every day, I just trying to learn as much as I can and just kind of get a good feel. I think the best advice I ever kind of got was just basically just fly and then let your body do its natural thing. It's kind of like trying to get into a flow. So once you're flying the paraglide without thinking about it, you're using your brain power to looking at observing what's around you. The birds are doing, what the wind's doing. You kind of just get a bigger picture of the situation. I find that really helps for me. For me, safety is number one. I always consider safety as number one. And I'd rather land than not fly another day. That's kind of my approach to that situation.
Yeah, I want to dig into that just specifically with you, because you and maybe compare this to pre-accident and post, because you were telling some stories the other night about how aggressive you were when you first got into it, and you were flying like comp gliders day 3, and just like you were just full on. And then did the accident, was it literally that changed it? Or because now you're like, I don't give a shit if I bomb out. I'm here to have a good time.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I actually, when I started paragliding, I got invited to Valle with my friend Paul down to Valle de Bravo. And I've never flown thermals. He just basically told me to go learn at this coastal soaring site, and then next week meet me at Valle. And then literally, like, I showed up the week before the 2009 World Championship. I saw like all these cool pilots like Lisa Oudry, like putting in the French flag on their advanced gliders, and these things are so bitchin'. Just going out there flying with them, it's like, wow, you could circle on this stuff? I can get up to like 6,000 feet. This is awesome, I came back, just ordered the wrong size glider, ordered Attic 2, small, a pod and everything. I was bitching and signed up for every single race as possible, just charging, learning as much as I could. And literally from 2009 to 2010, I got a wild card at Chien World Cup. And I remember meeting Andre Ransford from South Africa. And he basically kind of just told me straight up, it's like, hey, your demographic is most likely to get hurt because you just charge and you don't care you know, you most likely going to get hurt. Literally within 3 days, room at reserve. So that always stuck to my head. And every time I do something stupid, I always kind of have that thought in my head. So yeah, you just have to time and patience, you know. Like when I jumped up a class, my rules was basically win the class 3 times before I went up a class, and that's what I did. So I won sport class 3 times, won zero class 3 times, and then when the time I jumped up, that's when the Enzo 1 came out, and that was, I think, it was too big a jump for me. I wish I would have jumped on something like an Ice Peak 6, something like that, more mellow, and then maybe that would have prevented a lot of accidents, you know. And I think you know, that's lack of experience, not because the glider's bad. Just I didn't.
You just weren't ready.
I just wasn't ready for it, and then that took a long time. I mean, it was stupid for us to go fly Owens Valley in midsummer. First of all, you know, that's how the accident happened, and after that, it took a while for me to kind of get back to the sport, you know. And once I'm back, it's kind of like riding a bicycle again. You kind of rediscover the fun of, you know, traveling to foreign places and meeting all your old friends again, like seeing Francisco in his home country and checking things out and seeing Gavin and Robert, you know, like different parts. And it's funny, like once you come to these comps, you see the same guys over and over again. It's kind of like reunion in certain ways. Another cool thing about comps is like, you know, you kind of go to places that normally tourists don't go to, you know, less travel locations, and really get to know the people and experience the lifestyles and stuff like that. And I really highly recommend any pilots from any, you know, levels to do comps, because I think it's great. I mean, you pay here, how much do we pay for the comp? Like 150, whatever.
Like 200
doesn't
bucks,
matter. A very small amount. You get to fly for 7 days with meteorological background. You get to have pilots to talk to, share ideas, and just chit chat and just have a good time and learn. I mean, that's a great value for what you get, you know, minus the expenses that come in here. So,
JP, what about you? Do you have a kind of an overall strategy, or do you have, because you've been racing a long time, would you say 92?
98.
98.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of a you know, a strategy that seems to work?
I would say I'm still learning, first of all.
Yeah.
I came here with a firm intention not to use my discard day. So I did it on the first day. So you see, I still have lots of things to know. I knew it. I shouldn't. But anyway. Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, it's a long process, I think. It's also a question of mental. So I realized a few years ago that it's, if you want to win a comp, there is a different thing between winning tasks and winning comps. And I think those are 2 different kind of persons. All 3 around the table, we might be more the kind of winning tasks person instead of winning comps. I've seen a lot of people winning comps without winning any task in their entire life.
Yeah.
And it's a different way of flying. So we didn't mention it today, but yeah, if you want to win a comp, you have to fly a bit more conservative, and there is a way of doing it. The French have a very good strategy for that. It's just to put you in a position where you can kind of be dominant and wait and see what's going on and see what are the best opportunities and follow the best ones. It happens here also. We can also detect the pilots who are acting or behaving like that. I wish I would do so when I want to win a comp, which I am on the way to that. But I'm still more excited about winning a task so far. Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
JP, keep the mic. Can you regale us with the comp story that comes to mind? It could be the most exciting or the most crazy, or it doesn't have to be you either. It could be something you saw.
No, so yeah, I've been in many comps. I have had many stories. I remember that British Open in Saint-André. I was talking to Calvo by the time. It was Calvo was the meet director, and I was announcing, this pilot through reserve and etc. And the funny thing is, next morning he explained to the people at the meeting, Robert announced many reserve, and the last one was himself under the reserve, was calling me and saying, Calvo, I'm under the reserve. So that day there were 7 reserve.
Whoa.
At the same day.
Wow.
We've had some sad stories. I was in Piedrahita with my family 2011, and then my kids asking me, why are you doing that sport? I say, why are you asking the question? Well, you could die. And then, yeah, you have this kind of feelings. We did this epic flight in Chelan, which I was lucky enough to be first on goal when we did it. The 224 Ks. It was super funny. So I would say that it's real adventure. Flying comps is meeting people, is also living incredible stories. When you land, you have so many images in your head, so many things to say that's it's just impossible to share with anybody but pilots. And I have very often the feeling that when I end up a camp, I come back home with a real full adventure. And so, yeah, it made my day or my holidays.
Cool. Jimmy, before you tell yours, were any of you guys at the super final with the fire flying in Colombia in 2000? It was 2012, but it was 2013. So I don't remember what day it was, but it was my first year of comps, and I got quite lucky because the PWC was in Sun Valley that year, and I got really lucky there. And so I made it to the super final, and I was just getting trashed at the super final. It was very humbling, but they light the sugarcane on fire in Rodanillo. Those of you who've been there, you've seen all these, and some of them can get really big and these huge columns. And it was quite a stable, slow day, and the lead gaggle was trying very hard to get into goal, and Kriegel was there, and Yasin, and a few of them flew into the column, and Kriegel later posted his instrument, and it was a 20-meter climb. And Yasin went in to this thing like 50 feet off the ground. So Kriegel went in way high and just Kriegeled it. He went in, lost his glider, full stalled, got his glider back, lost his glider again, full stalled. Matt Beechner was just circling on the outside of this column, and it was that black. It was just a column of black. And Farmer was like, I'm not going in there. And he just watched just one guy after another go into this thing and just explode. But Yasin went in right off the ground, and it took him 2,000 feet above the top of the column, like just straight up. His glider exploded right away. He never got it back together. It twisted up like a rope. He said it definitely had like more than 20 twists. It was literally just a rope over his head. And he went to throw his reserve, and he thought, oh, no, I can't throw it yet because I'll land in the fire. So he went 2,000, he just rode it all the way to the top and came out the top of the thing and went, okay, now I can throw. Anyway, that was my favorite comp story. But do you have a favorite comp story?
Just one thing to add: they generate cumulus, so we call them pyrocumuluses. And,
totally,
really
this one was
powerful.
Big. Yeah, this one was big. It wasn't a little one. And Luc Armand got up the next day and gave a very heartfelt, I don't want to ever see anybody do that again.
No, we were
really
in a camp. I think it was next year. There was a paramotor circling the fires to prevent us to go inside.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, they set up safety.
Yeah. There was a new setup.
Jimmy, you got a favorite comp story?
Yeah, it's more like a experience, like when you start the sport, you kind of have this dream of doing something amazing and stuff. But to be serious, like this is like ESPN Ocho stuff, like not to make fun of the sport or anything, but it's just like it's such a new growing sport. I kind of describe this as like the sport to me kind of reminds me of like in the 70s, where guys are loading up their motorcycles and bands and just kind of vagabonding and just trying their hearts out. And there's no money involved. People really do this for their passion, and they just truly love the sport. That's what I really like about this sport, That's what really kind of drives me. And you just get to see people from around the world and get to visit them and stuff. I mean, to me, that's kind of the neatest thing. I mean, winning a task is great. Winning a comp is good, but I think just kind of hang out with friends is probably like the favorite parts for me. So I always say, people with the most fun wins the comp, right? Even though you could be doing shitty, you're still having the best fun.
Well, in terms of stories, I have many stories like the fire ones in Brazil. Also, there's a lot of fires in Brazil. And last time in the PWC there was one of these huge columns, and all the guys were going in. And I said, no, I'm not going to go in there. It's just ugly. And of course, the day turned bad for me because the guys went super high, and I had to scratch all the way to the goal. And they made it before me. So that's a bad story for me. But I guess stories about comps are all, just racing, and all the flying part is pretty much the same, except with different touch-ups. But the good stories are behind the comps, the days you don't fly, which many can be told, many cannot be told. Those are the best stories. I need a lot of time to tell them, but there's many.
All right. Well, we'll save it for another show. Before we close, do you guys have any last bit of advice for the audience? Anything, the many people who listen that are maybe thinking about doing their first comp, or maybe thinking about taking their first trip to Valle or Roldanillo this winter, or here or Chile, just any kind of advice for them or what they should be thinking about?
Well, the first advice is go as a learning process. So don't think you're going to win the comp. That makes it safer. Second is, just go to comps. The way I started is I thought, hey, I can go fly cross country and I have somebody to retrieve me, and I have all the safety around me and everything, and experienced pilots just taking me by the hand to long places, long flights. So my advice is just be as a student to the first comps, but go to comps if you can.
Yeah, I would push it even further in your direction. Keep your glider. Don't buy a comp glider for your first comp.
Yeah, of course.
So just
Great one.
make it with your glider. Learn to fly. So you should change from to another glider once you really push the bar 100% and you feel comfortable with that. Then you can change the glider. Else, you don't use your glider enough, so you just keep it. And of course, it's frustrating. You see those comp gliders flying and literally, leaving you. But that's part of the game. So I would also recommend people to enjoy, and so just remove the pressure and try to make go as much as you can. And as we all said, safety first. So don't put yourself into trouble, and don't try to beat the lead gaggle when you're doing your first comp. Doesn't work.
There's a good thing you hinted on there, though, that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. The two-liners these days, let's use the Zeno as an example, because it's been a huge hit and tons of people are flying it. I think there's a lot of hidden risk there, because it's a super solid glider. The two-liners these days are amazing gliders. They're really solid, and I think they give people a lot of false confidence.
Yeah, you made a point. I would recommend any comp pilot to do SIV before his first comp. That's very important. Go to a lake, whatever. Find a school and have a reliable teacher, or and do SIV. It's very, very important to know how to recover from different situations, and also to learn about your glider and to have the feeling of the glide of your glider. That's super important.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that too, because I think people get a new respect for big spanny gliders when they start stalling them and doing weird stuff to them. It's not like learning how to stall a B
No,
wing.
I come from a flat country in Belgium. It's very flat, so people used to buy big boys gliders, and we had this championship in Switzerland. Half of the people wouldn't take off because they were frightened by the conditions, and I respect that. I totally respect it, and that was, I think, a good decision. But it's a bit sad also, because if they came with their own glider, they would have, more, adapted glider, they would have flown for sure, and it was a nice day to fly. So sometimes you fly your own takeoff and sight, and you feel confident, but just go try your glider in the Alps or in some rough mountains, and then you'll see, okay, maybe I should practice more before changing my glider. I had one person coming. Well, it's very. I have very often a person coming to me. Look, I'm willing to buy a Zeno, or I'm willing to buy a Flow, or whatever. And I'm really try to cool them a bit. But I have to admit one thing though, is it's also a matter of feeling. So. I started to fly comp gliders quite early in my career, because I felt more confident under it. So, but it's the behavior of the glider versus the pilot. So it's not only a matter of skills, but something that, there is a interaction between you and your glider. And if you have a good fit, then why not? But you have to know that you have to remain and stay humble below the glider. I've never seen a glider failed. I've always seen pilots failing.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. I think it's very important to kind of start with a slower glider, and then you could have just as much fun. It's just a funny feeling when you get this glider. You get a good start. You're crossing the valley. You're just smashing bar. I just remember the time at the rat race. Me and Kiwi just crossing the Applegate Valley and just thinking that we were doing this. At the start, and next 5 seconds later, these big boys gliders, the skinny ninja wings are flying over us. But that's kind of cool because as you have as much fun as you can with these wings and you gain experience and respect for wings, you kind of look back now and laugh at these experiences and how much fun you had. And then, of course, flying these wings, you're going to make tons of mistakes and know your limits and stuff. But that's how you learn. You have to make mistakes. If you just go out there and do the best, you never learn the basic. You didn't really set a strong foundation at first. And I truly believe that you have to spend a lot of time flying, spend a lot of time developing that process, and then getting into a system and working your way up to those skinny comp wings that everybody wants to fly. But
yeah, I mean, look at some of the guys here. I mean, there was a guy in Antarctic today that was just crushing it out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome,
and
that's got to be a really good feeling.
That's a good point to make. Like, last year we went to the Canadian Nationals in Pemberton, and these deltas were keeping up with the Enzo 3s because we can't push as far or close to the cliff. These guys could just full bar to the areas, and then the advantage of the comp glider was really taken away. It's actually better to fly a Xeno and a Delta at that point,
Last year at the Monarca, Marco, I mean, he's a very talented, great comp pilot, but he won it on the Queen. He won it on a Sea Glider. He beat everybody on the Enzos and because he mashed bar through all the convergence. We were always coming off like, oh God, trying to deal, and he just kept going. It was pretty cool.
Well, I stayed in the previous conversation. I lost my mind for a bit. But what I wanted to add to the previous conversation was don't try to beat the guy next to you. So the first time you go to a comp, just go as a learner again, and don't try to beat the guy next to you because it doesn't change anything in the results. To win a comp, it requires a full week of good flying. So when you're flying next to a guy and you're like, I want to beat this guy next to me, you probably don't even know who he is. But at that moment, you just want to beat whoever is around you. That's a huge mistake everybody makes, especially in the beginnings. And that's when you get yourself into trouble, when you push it more than you need it, just to beat the guy next to you. And that's not going to change anything in the comp result.
Super good advice.
So just, keep in mind that to win a comp, it takes 7 full, really good flying days from you. So most likely in the beginning, it's not going to happen because you don't have experience. So just go to a comp to enjoy every single flight, not winning against your buddy next to you. Just use your buddy. Be a buddy to him and fly with him. That's what it's going to take you to go. And I'm still mad at you. Yes, I don't forgive you. So disappointed.
Guys, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed that. And let's go get some chow.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed that live show here from Argentina. And as always, all we ask for is a buck a show. If you got something out of this, treat it like a magazine subscription, and you can support us. But you can support us in many other ways. It doesn't have to be financial. You can blog about it. You can share it with your friends. You can talk about it on the way up to launch. What it's all about is just sharing exactly like this was, just tips and strategies to make you safer and a better pilot. So hope you got something out of it. But if you want to support us financially, that's what makes this all possible. If you can, please only do it if you can. I don't want it to impinge on your lifestyle in any way. This is just a bonus kind of thing. But if you can, go to cloudbasemayhem.com and you'll see the donate button there. And you can do it as a one-time thing through PayPal, or you can become a supporter through Patreon. And we now also are accepting Bitcoin and all that crazy currency. So I don't know too much about that, but we've got that now on the website. That's kind of fun if you're into crypto. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks so much. Appreciate your support. Appreciate you listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.